What's up, guys? Welcome to this edition of a Funko Popcast. I am DK Wrestler.
And I'm MD Shady.
And in today's podcast, it's basically all about me. And that's no pun intended to the saying that Emma from WWE says. It's mainly because this entire podcast, we're going to be talking about Funko Pop lineups that I, DK Wrestler, thoroughly enjoy, and then we're going to kind of go over favorites within those lines. But that's mainly also because this past week, or yesterday as we're recording this, was my birthday, so I thought that this podcast would be more of like a birthday celebration type podcast, I guess is the best I can say it for me. I thought that I would go through, I think I've listed 15 different lineups of Funko Pops, and then MD will discuss about what he thinks of those sets also, and then kind of rate out of 10 what he thinks of those sets, because even though MD and I do have similarities of pop sets that we do collect, there are some that basically we don't collect. Let's kick off with the very first set that I've listed, and I kind of had this a little bit ranked. So the first set I've listed is Tommy Boy, which is a very small set. Pretty cool set, though. There are 3 pops. There's obviously Tommy, Richard, and then a Target exclusive Tommy. That is, of course, that famous scene of fat guy in a little coat. I mean, Tommy Boy, such an amazing movie. And I mean, there was the sequel of Black Sheep, which was all right. It wasn't as good as Tommy Boy, but it was still cool that we got Tommy Boy Pops.
I mean, it's a great movie. It's been quite some time since I've watched it. And the pops are pretty much exactly what you'd expect for a set like this. You have the 2 main characters, and then you have the exclusive, which is basically the most iconic part of the movie. So realistically, I think that there's nothing that needed to be added to this set. I think that that is just exactly what they needed. And if I had to rank it, I would probably rank it pretty high. It is a good set. I believe I do have one of the pops. I think I just have the Tommy out of this set. I'd give it about a 7.5, I think.
Then the next set that I'm going to be talking about is Jumanji. Jumanji being one of my favorite movies of all time. Of course, there's actually technically 3 pops overall. Once again, it's a very small set, but it's 2 of the pops being from the more sequel movie of Welcome to the Jungle, which features, I believe it's Dr. Smolder Bravestone, which is The Rock's character. And then there is Jack Black's character. I forget, it's like Shelby something, which are still some pretty decent pops. And then there's only 1 pop, or actually 2 pops now as I think about it, from the OG set with Alan Parrish, but I always forget because the common one is just him standing there. And then the exclusive is him holding a knife in his hand. So it wasn't really much of a difference, which is why I totally forgot about it. And yeah, these aren't too bad. I mean, I wish with Jumanji, though, like the OG Jumanji, that there was definitely more added to it. I think there definitely should be more characters to that set.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy the set quite a bit. I believe I have just the common pop of Alan Parrish, but I do wish that there was more. There's a lot they can do. Obviously, you can have like the boy turned into the monkey, and definitely a lot of different characters that you can have. You could even have different, maybe like moments where they're in like the grocery store, like superstore or whatever. Definitely a lot of things that could be added for the Jumanji set. I haven't seen the sequel movies, so I can't really talk about those pops too much, but it is cool. You get The Rock and you get Jack Black. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that I would add besides some of the stuff that I said. Obviously, I can't speak for the sequels, but if I had to rank the set, I mean, pretty small set with 2 pops for basically each movie. I'd probably give it like a 5 because the 2 pops for the original are kind of the same, and I felt like they could have done a lot more of exciting things with it.
Then the next set I have here is Star Wars. I mean, with the Star Wars set, it's, I guess, very picky with them. I mean, I have collected quite a bit of Darth Vader related pops. I have been really wanting to get all of the like main Sith Lords of the Star Wars series, but nonetheless, I think that's where I'm very picky with Star Wars, and especially because, I mean, with the whole Star Wars set, there's just way too many pops in the set. They have reached, I believe, 1,000 at this point, and then especially as of late where you got like that A New Hope set, which was released at Star Wars Celebration and then was released as a common, but with black bases instead of silver. So it's just kind of pointless. And I guess different box style, but still like the exact same pop figures.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many Star Wars pops. I have a decent collection of Star Wars pops as well. I have like the OG Jabba, I have the OG Princess Leia, a couple different Mandos, Baby Yoda. Can't remember all the ones that I have, but I probably have about 20 or 25 different Star Wars pops. I feel like mine is just like random characters that I like, whereas DK obviously does focus more on the Sith and Darth Vader, which is cool. I like that it's narrowed down like that. I don't really collect too much of the Star Wars pops because I do collect Star Wars figures in like other capacities. So I figure there's no reason to collect them in pop form unless it's something pretty cool that like I absolutely needed. For pops that we need, I mean, there's so many. I mean, we've talked about it previously on our Return of the Jedi podcast. So if you want to know about pops that I think we need for Return of the Jedi, go check out that podcast. But besides that, I mean, I don't know. It'd be cool to see some like pod racer, like rides. I think that that would be really cool for the Phantom Menace.
For pops that I kind of want to see, I mean, I think when it comes down once again to the Sith Lords, and I think maybe they will focus on this if they do a volume 2 of the Red Saber series, is Asajj Ventress is a Sith Lord that I feel like a lot of people want in pop form. The Phantom Menace with the pod race rides is an amazing idea in my opinion. And I think, in my opinion, it probably will happen next year when I believe Phantom Menace celebrates the 25th anniversary of the movie's release. So we could be seeing that.
If I had to give it a rating, it would have to be pretty high. I mean, it's one of the best. There's a ton of pops for it. I'd probably give it a 9.
Then the next set I have is, I'm going to say a 50-50 set because some people like it, some people don't, but I do collect it. Alien Remix. Of course, it is the alien from Toy Story, and it's dressed up as different characters from different Pixar movies. And I mean, this lineup has quite a bit. I mean, you first seen it with the Mattel figures that they did. So Funko kind of took that idea also and made it into pop figures, where obviously you would have alien dressed up as, let's say, Buzz Lightyear or Woody, Sully, Randall, Mrs. Incredible. I mean, there's a whole list, and I feel like there's also some that they didn't do in pop form that they did for those Mattel toys, and they haven't done it yet, but maybe they never did it because they weren't entirely the best-selling figures.
Alien Remix is definitely an interesting set. I don't hate it and I don't love it, I guess is the best way to put it. I think that they look pretty good. It's definitely not exactly my cup of tea, though I do love Pixar and Toy Story. It's just not something that I'm absolutely willing to collect, especially when I'm running out of space for Funko Pop, so I kind of have to choose like the best of the best at this point. And it's a fairly big set. I mean, there's got to be at least 20 to 30 pops in that set if I had to guess. They look good. I like how some of them look a lot better than others, but they do definitely cover their ground with all of the Pixar movies. And it is interesting to see that like Mattel has their own figure line, which is basically exactly the same thing. Are we missing anything? I don't think so. I think that the way that the set is good enough. I feel like if they tried to bring it back, it probably wouldn't sell that great. If I had to give it a rating, I would probably give it a 6, just because it's not my cup of tea, but I do think that the pops look good and the concept is definitely there.
The next lineup, I think MD is not going to be entirely a big fan of, but the sport that's around it, he is a fan of, and that is the Pittsburgh Penguins, my favorite hockey team for the NHL. I know MD, he's a big fan of Washington Capitals, so he may be a little bit biased, but maybe he can like work towards talking about hockey pops instead of just the Pittsburgh Penguins. But the Pittsburgh Penguins lineup is all right. I mean, obviously it's my favorite hockey team, so I am going to collect, and I'm currently at this moment complete set of Pittsburgh Penguins pops because they have not made any more Pittsburgh Penguins pops since I want to say 2020, at least maybe 2021. Now, as I think about it, there is flaws with this in that they've only done 3 players, while you see with certain teams like obviously Toronto Maple Leafs, they've made a bunch of players, maybe at least 5 players or 4 for Toronto Maple Leafs, while they've only done 3 for Pittsburgh. MD is doing 4. There's not, what do you mean there? Oh, now I'm thinking like 4. What do you mean 4? Because I forgot about Mario Lemieux, because the only ones that I have listed down are Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. I feel like they can dabble into more players, but I think the problem with Pittsburgh is that I feel like they're always getting rid of so many players, because at one point it's like, cool, it'd be really cool to get a Marc-Andre Fleury pop. But then I remember the day that I found out that Marc-Andre Fleury was not on the Pittsburgh Penguins was when I seen the Vegas Golden Knights Marc-Andre Fleury at my local EB Games at the time. And I thought, didn't even know that he switched. And then I don't even think he's in Vegas Golden Knights anymore. I think he's in like either Minnesota or Chicago. I'm sure MD will correct me since he's more up to date with hockey than I am nowadays. But yeah, I mean, if I'm going to think of any player from Pittsburgh Penguins specifically that I think should be made next, because I feel like maybe he will stick around for a little bit longer, I think it should be Jeff Carter. As terms to other players for hockey specifically, I mean, you got to talk about hockey, we're Canadians. I would love to see a Matt Sundin pop. I don't know why they haven't made a Matt Sundin pop yet. And I think Joe Sakic would be a cool player to be made into a pop form.
Yeah, I mean, the NHL pops are one of my favorite sets, though I don't collect a ton of them. I collect like some players here and there, and obviously all of the Washington Capitals. But if we're talking about Pittsburgh, yeah, it's not a bad set. It is one of those like top tier sets for NHL pops. I mean, with Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin being huge money draws, it makes sense. I would say that probably Toronto is the third behind them because of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, stuff like that. So I'd say those three teams probably have the most pops. I could be wrong about that, but if I had to guess, I'd probably say it'd be those three. But Pittsburgh does have some good pops. I mean, there's a couple different versions of Sidney Crosby. You have the Evgeny Malkin, the Crystal Tang, and then the Mario Lemieux as well. There's definitely some pops I would like to see for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Marc-Andre Fleury, I think that once he is retired, we probably would see a Pittsburgh version of Marc-Andre Fleury. That just makes sense. That's kind of the team that you think about when you think of Marc-Andre Fleury. I would like to see a Jaromir Jagr in a Pittsburgh jersey. I would also like to see him in a Capitals jersey. So that would be cool if there was variations of that, even if it was like a Chase variation. That would be pretty sweet. Other players from the NHL that I would like to see, definitely Matt Sundin, Darcy Tucker, Ty Domi, to talk about some of the older Leafs. Besides that, I don't know. There's so many. I would love to see more versions of Ovechkin. Nicholas Backstrom, I don't know how he does not have a Funko Pop yet, where TJ Oshie as well as John Carlson have already gotten one. That just really doesn't make any sense to me because Backstrom has been on the team for quite some time now. And then going back to what DK said about Jeff Carter, I believe there already is a Jeff Carter pop when he was on LA, if I remember correctly. So I definitely think seeing him in a Pittsburgh jersey makes sense for, like, let's say the next Pittsburgh pop, if it wasn't, let's just say, a different variation of Sidney Crosby. If I had to give a rating on the set, it's got to be high for me. It's one of my favorite sports. They do a pretty good job of these pops. I'd probably give it an 8, a solid 8.
Okay, that's just hockey overall, right?
Yeah.
What would you give Pittsburgh specifically?
0. No, I would give them also an 8. I feel like I said, they have one of the teams that has the most amount of pops, and the pops are pretty solid for that team. So yeah, probably stick it at 8 as well.
So the next set I have is a set that Funko has not made any more pops since. We actually talked about this on pop sets that deserve more. That is Saved by the Bell. There's only 6 pops in the set. It's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I mean, it was one of the best TV shows of the, I guess you can say, late 80s, even though it was like 1 year in the 80s with being 89, and then right into the early 90s. Such a great show. I got the whole complete set on DVD. Funny enough, I actually have not watched it on my DVD set yet, that I think I haven't even opened up the shrink wrap yet. But Zach Morris, Kelly Kapowski, AC Slater, Jesse Spano, Screech, and Lisa Turtle. That's all we have. There is so much room for more characters, even if it's at least one more variant of each of the characters. I think that can be done, and I'd be super happy to see that because, boom, I would definitely get it because Saved by the Bell, such an amazing show.
Yeah, I mean, an amazing set. If you guys haven't heard the story, Saved by the Bell is the first set of pops that I collected. And I actually do have my Zach Morris pop signed by the actor who plays Zach Morris. It is probably my most beloved set of Funko Pops. If, let's say, something had happened and I could only, let's say, save 6 Funko Pops from burning fire, it would probably be those 6 because, I mean, it's my first 6. It's kind of what got me into it, and I really do love those pops. But that being said, I do think that there should be more pops in the set. I think having the 6 makes sense, especially for the time that these came out for Funko. But now I think we could definitely dabble back into it and get a couple different pops. Obviously, Mr. Belding, we could do, like, I don't know if it'd be like one of those deluxe moments that you have to piece together of the cafe or something like that. Maybe even just like the hallway with like the stairwell at school. I think that would be really cool as well. There's definitely so much potential because they did a whole lot of things over this fairly long series. So yeah, definitely Mr. Belding has to be like number 1 though. Like, that's an essential pop. I don't know how we haven't got that yet. So hopefully one day we do get it. If I had to rate this, it has to be a 9. I mean, it's one of my favorite sets. It would be perfect if we did have Mr. Belding, but we don't. So that's why it's a 9 for me.
All right, so the next set I have listed here is the Pop Rocks lineup. I originally wanted to put like multiple bands and artists as separate entries, but I thought let's put them all together for Rocks because yes, I do collect specific ones, especially because the majority of my favorite artists and bands, like in my top 5 specifically, have been made into pop form. Number 1 being Green Day, who recently got pops within the last 2 years. Metallica, which I have almost every single pop in the Metallica set, besides if you are including the Royal Ontario Museum exclusive Kirk Hammett pops that are basically like the Universal Monsters, which I don't really count because also it's in the Icons lineup, so it doesn't really fall into that category. But the only one I'm missing on my technicality of what I'm considering as the Metallica lineup is the Black Album deluxe albums. And then there's also the Nirvana pops of just Kurt Cobain, which I had recently obtained the Hot Topic exclusive, and I'm halfway there, no pun intended, to Bon Jovi there. Still need the, I believe it's FYE exclusive, which I mean, if you heard that story about how dumb I am for not picking up for a cheap price and now it's super expensive. And then the Funko Shop exclusive one with the big glasses that actually MD has. Actually, MD has all 4 of those Kurt Cobain pops. He'll probably talk about in a little sec. And then Ozzy Osbourne also, I've been trying to obtain. Even like the Black Sabbath albums, I'm just like, you know what? It's kind of Ozzy. I mean, Ozzy is the singer of Black Sabbath for the majority of Black Sabbath's stint. But I thought, you know what? Just as a little bonus piece, because I don't know the likeliness of me getting that OG Ozzy Osbourne. And then we have the newer exclusives. Actually, as we are recording this podcast, the Funko Shop just released the new Ozzy Osbourne Funko Shop exclusive. So talk about perfect timing as we're recording this podcast. And then as terms to bands and stuff that I want to see, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I would love to see more Green Day pops, that's for sure. But like one band that has never had pops, and it would be very weird because I would need a specific singer for me to like get the complete set. But I would love 3 Days Grace pops.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because that's actually one thing that just came to my mind. But first, before I go into that, let's talk about Pop Rocks. One of my favorite lineups. I have a ton of Pop Rocks pops. I've been thinking about thinning out my collection a little bit. And there's a bunch of different versions of Kiss, which is awesome. One of my favorite bands. There's 3 different Post Malones, which is awesome. I love Post Malone. Obviously, the 4 Kurt Cobains, I have all 4 of those. I love those pops. There's just so many different things, and there's so many that still could be made. I could definitely list a ton. I was thinking 3 Days Grace, and yeah, you definitely want to have Adam. Probably my top want for the Pop Rocks has to be the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think that they could do so many different things with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, so many different versions of Flea and Anthony Kiedis that it'd be unreal. If I had to put a rating on the Pop Rocks, oh, that's a tough one. I do really like the set, though. I do feel like sometimes they put out some artists where it's like, I don't think this is like super necessary because it's not an artist that, let's say, most people would think about. I'd probably give it an 8.5.
All right, so the next set is more of one specific character, and that is Carnage from the Marvel lineup. Carnage, such an awesome villain in the Spider-Man comics. I've been collecting like a full-on Carnage only set as terms to Marvel. I mean, I have the New York Comic-Con version with the tendrils. There's also that version in blacklight form, which is super expensive at this point. And then the Absolute Carnage Deluxe, that was a previous exclusive, is also another one that I can mention and is a really cool pop.
Yeah, I mean, all of the Carnage pops look awesome. I think that it's a really cool set for DK to be collecting like that, is just getting all the different Carnage pops. I think that that's wicked because they all look so good, especially that Blacklight one, which is super expensive. That's one that I'm definitely missing out of my collection. I think that that's a wicked pop. For things that I think are missing, I don't know if there's anything that I could necessarily like pull out to say like this is a certain Carnage that I would like to see. But as we do get different Carnages, they're always bangers. I don't think they really ever miss with Carnage pops. If I had to give it a rating, I would probably say 7.
All right, so the next set we're going to be looking at is actually a set that technically is not out yet, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to be getting these pops, and if there's more, I definitely will be getting the rest. That's Trailer Park Boys. That just got announced a couple of weeks ago. We actually just talked about this last week on the podcast. So, I mean, if you listened to last week's podcast, you heard about how amazing this set is with just 3 pops of Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles, and how we definitely want to see more pops from this set, whether it is a bunch of different versions of Bubbles or we got newer characters like, let's say, Randy and Mr. Leahy, J-Rock. There's a whole bunch. Maybe even like, once again, we talk about deluxe sets. How cool would it be to do the whole trailer park and then, like in a build a scene? I don't know. That's just me thinking, but I mean, there's a lot that could be done.
Yeah, super excited about this. I'm definitely going to be getting those 3 pops. You summed it up pretty well. I mean, there's a lot more that we need to see. One that I know that DK definitely wants is the Green Bastard Parts Unknown. That would be a wicked pop. There's definitely so much. You could definitely have J-Rock and his posse. Obviously, pop rides and pop towns with some of the different trailers makes so much sense. Ray in his wheelchair. There's so many different things that you can have. Right now, the rating that I have on it is an 8 because these 3 pops look amazing. But I think that this set could easily be like a 12. And I know that this is out of 10, but I'm saying if they do this correctly, this could be one of the best sets of all time.
The next set I have, and it's easily in one of my top 5s. It's like kind of tied with the next one we're going to be talking about, but this one is Crash Bandicoot, my favorite video game of all time. This set is not too bad. There is a lot of different versions of Crash, but you do get the odd, like different characters like Neo Cortex and Coco Bandicoot. I mean, we did get Tiny Tiger, pretty decent. We got the game covers recently, which is pretty decent. Aku Aku. Yeah, this is pretty cool, but there is a lot of untapped potential that still needs to be made. Like I've been saying for years, let's get Ripperoo. Why isn't there a Ripperoo? Especially because there's different versions of Ripperoo from the different games that look very cool. You got Nitrous Brio. I mean, at this point, I feel like it's a lot of the bosses from the different sections of like the islands that you go to.
Yeah, the Crash Bandicoot lineup is awesome. I do have most of the pops. The pop rides is amazing. I think that the Crash Bandicoot that they did where he's kind of spinning and forming that like cone, I think that is done pretty well. How he kind of has like his legs sticking out from different ends to show that he is spinning in a circle. The different villains that they've put out look pretty good. Cortex, obviously, I would say is the best one. The Coco Bandicoot looks really awesome as well. But yeah, there is a little bit of untapped potential that they could do with some different characters. I don't know if we will see it because it feels like it's been forever since we've seen some Crash Bandicoot pops, but I would be pretty happy if we did see some more. The rating that I have on the Crash Bandicoot pops for now is probably a 7.5.
The next set, and what I would consider as a like tie with Crash Bandicoot, Yu-Gi-Oh! Easily my favorite anime. I grew up on watching that as a kid. And I mean, there's just so many awesome like characters and duel monsters in the series. I mean, they made so many already. Even when we did our first fandom related podcast, which was on Yu-Gi-Oh, we talked about what we could see next in the set. And I mean, a lot of those were just done already. Like we've seen a lot of like the Egyptian, or no, we didn't talk about the Egyptian god cards as like a potential because that already just got announced. But like Summon Skull was one that like we were like, yeah, this needs to be made. And I feel like there was a couple others, but it was cool to see some cool characters like Yami Merrick that I didn't think was going to be made in a while, even made before Bakura. It's a pretty interesting set, and I can't wait to see more like, let's say, Time Wizard, and maybe if they go into like the spell cards like Pot of Greed, like we've mentioned a bunch of times as potential Yu-Gi-Oh pops.
Yeah, definitely one of the best sets in my opinion. I love the set so much. I still have to finish collecting all of the pops that there are, and we've definitely talked many times about pops that we want to see for this set. One huge one for me is Karibo. I think a flocked Karibo would be amazing, considering I don't think there is any flocked pops in the Yu-Gi-Oh set. So definitely a bunch of different duel monsters would be awesome. And then we could also see some of the human characters down the road, maybe Yugi's grandpa. I think that would be pretty cool. So yeah, there's definitely a ton that we want to see for Yu-Gi-Oh.
And what would you rate it out of 10?
I would give it probably an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay, so the next set we're going to be talking about that I enjoy collecting, that is Back to the Future. Probably maybe one of my favorite movie series of all time. I've actually mentioned, I believe, on a podcast before, which was a bit of a hot take, If you told me between Back to the Future or Star Wars, which one has to go and only one exists, I would say Back to the Future over Star Wars any day of the week. Love the whole concept of the time travel, and all three movies, I mean, the first and second are banger movies. The third one was all right. When it comes to this set, I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, MD rates this like a little bit lower than a lot of them, and that's because it is a massive set. There are some cool pops, like, let's say, Marty McFly with the guitar from Fan Expo 2018, the DeLorean. I mean, you got a couple of cool Doc pops, but in this entire set of, I believe it is 20 to 25, I want to say. I don't think they've hit 30 yet with the set. Literally every single one, besides, I believe, 2, are either Marty or Doc. I get it. Those are the 2 main characters, but there's just so many other characters that you can do in pop form that they haven't dabbled into yet. Obviously, I think we actually discussed about on our Back to the Future fandom related podcast, a little cheap plug in again, about a reasoning of how it definitely makes sense of why we may never see George McFly as terms to merchandising, but there's others that can definitely be done, especially like Mad Dog Tannen. We do have Biff Tannen, and then the other one we do have technically is Einstein in both the Pops for Purpose and in like the Pop and Buddy with Doc. There's definitely more that they can do. You can do different rides. You can do a town. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, they did do a town with Doc and the clock tower now, as I remember, but there's just so much that you can do with Back to the Future within the 3 movies. I don't know why they're not capitalizing on the other characters.
The Back to the Future set is great. It is pretty big, though. I do feel like there are maybe too many different Martys and Docs, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If, let's say, that's all you're collecting, you might want to have those extra pops that you can still collect. And there is different things that we still have to see. Obviously, like Mad Dog, that DK had said. I would like to see some more moments, maybe. I would like to see maybe some pops from the third movie, though it is the lesser of the 2 original ones. But yeah, I like this set a lot. There's a lot of really cool pops in here. I do want to maybe one day get that Fan Expo exclusive. I love that scene. It's just awesome. So if I had to give the set a rating, I think I would still rate it pretty high. I'd probably do a 7.5.
The next set I have here is The Office, another set that is kind of like a 50-50 set as terms to people really like it or people don't like it. I mean, there are some pros and cons. It is a pretty big set, so that's kind of a con, and especially there are lots of Jims, Michaels, and Dwights that take up almost half of the set, but then you do get the odd like characters that aren't those 3 characters, and it is a set that I am almost 100% complete on. When I first started collecting, it was literally I'm only getting Dwights. Then it became, I think I'm going to get all Dwights and Jims, maybe a Michael. And then with the amount of Jims, Michaels, and Dwights there were, I was like, you know what? I just might as well get the entire set. I mean, there's no way around it. I'm just going to get the entire set. And it's been taking me a while. I mean, the set's been out since 2019. There's only 5 pops, I believe. One of them being the Oscar Martinez. That's a Walmart exclusive. The Sumo Jim and Stanley from that collector's box that I pre-ordered back in 2021 from GameStop Canada. Heard nothing about it yet. Hopefully arrives soon, but I'm not getting my hopes up. The do-it-yourself Dwight as Elf, and then the Utica Takeover 3-pack that just recently released. It's the only ones, and then I'm completely done until they possibly make a new one or another Comic-Con exclusive, which hopefully it is a Comic-Con exclusive because I hate trying to get the huge waves, and especially hate how even as of the last couple of waves where I go to buy them, and then a lot of places, nobody buys them, and they end up being on clearance. So it's like, I should have just waited, but it's, FOMO kind of kicking in there. And I thought it would be cool to also discuss between the Jim, Michaels, and Dwights, what are favorite versions that Funko has done of each of those. So for Jim, I like Jim's Dwight because that's my favorite scene of all time from The Office. But if we're not counting that because it's technically also Dwight, then I like 3-Hole Punch Jim. Dwight Schrute, I like just regular Dwight that they first released in the first wave. And then my favorite Michael Scott pop has to be Prison Mike. And then if I'm going to mention a character, now as I think about it, that isn't any of those, that's probably my favorite. I like the Stanley Hudson with the pretzel. I think that pop was done very well.
The Office is an amazing set. We were basically begging for it in 2018 and some part of 2019. We wanted it so bad, and we finally got it, and Funko definitely delivered. It is a massive set. There's a ton of pops, and most of them are very, very good. Some of them might not be the best, but I feel like overall there's so many different moments from The Office, and Funko has done a good job of encapsulating a lot of those different moments. My favorite version of Dwight, I would say probably the just like your Jello stapler Dwight. I like that. I think that would make sense. My favorite Jim is the 3-hole punch Jim. My favorite Michael is got to be the prison Mike, but the normal Mike is definitely close behind, but definitely the prison Mike. I mean, that's hilarious and Hot Topic exclusive. So cool. And then if I had to mention a pop out of the set that I really enjoy that isn't one of those characters, I would have to go with, I believe it was Box Lunch exclusive, Kevin Malone, where he's wearing the tissue boxes on his feet. Love that pop. A hilarious moment from The Office where basically he says that his dogs are barking and he puts his feet in the like the ice machine. That's hilarious. So yeah, this set amazing. If there's stuff that I wanted to see get done, I feel like there's a couple different characters that could get like a new pop that it would just like make sense to have. I feel like we probably need to get a Gabe at some point. That makes sense to me. The ranking for the Office set, it's got to be 8.5, definitely close to a 9 though. What an amazing set.
The next set I have listed is WWE. I mean, of course, not only am I a wrestling fan, and I've been since I was basically 5 or 6 years old, but I am a pro wrestler myself. So it makes sense for me to collect WWE. But I don't collect every single WWE pop. There has been now, I believe the latest pop from what I could think of is the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes at number 123 in the pop WWE set. So there's at least 123, maybe 122, because there's obviously that mystery number 22 that was never made for the WWE lineup. Specifically, I have been collecting every pop of like certain WWE superstars. I'll get, obviously, there's the Cody Rhodes. I have Edge. I do have Dude Love because that's my favorite face of Foley instead of getting, OG Foley, Cactus Jack, and all that. But I do have almost every single Undertaker. I actually just recently picked up the Undertaker Brock Lesnar 2-pack, and then obviously the Undertaker and Paul Bearer 2-pack. I mean, the only one I'm missing is the GameStop exclusive Undertaker where he's sitting up in the casket. That's the only one I'm missing. Other than that, I have all the Undertaker pops and plan to continue collecting every Undertaker pop. I have both Randy Ortons because Randy Orton is my favorite current wrestler, I guess I could say. And I actually have every single Becky Lynch pop because she is pretty much my favorite women's wrestler besides Lita, who has not had a Funko Pop yet. So what the heck, Funko? I'm still waiting on a Lita pop, if anything.
The WWE lineup is amazing. I definitely do have a pretty decent collection of them, but I do actually plan on selling most of my WWE pops. There are some that I'm going to keep. I will keep my Edge. I'll probably keep my translucent Amazon exclusive John Cena. I think it was Amazon exclusive. Besides that, I don't know what else I'll keep. There might be a few that I pick and choose to keep, but for the most part, I do think I'm going to sell a lot of them. And the only reason for that is that I've been collecting like Mattel wrestling figures quite a bit recently. I feel like I should be collecting both the Mattel figures as well as the Funko figures. I've been collecting the Mattel figures for such a long time at this point, as well as the Jakks Pacific figures, that it just doesn't make sense to grow a huge collection of WWE Funko figures. So yeah, I'll probably be slowly selling off some of those pops, but the set is awesome. I mean, over 100 different pops. They've definitely done a ton of different superstars. There are some, of course, that have a lot more pops than others, like Rey Mysterio and John Cena. I believe Ric Flair now has quite a few as well. But yeah, they're great, and I'm loving how we're getting the in-ring moments. We've been getting like pop rides with the Eddie Guerrero. That's an awesome pop that I own. So yeah, what a great set. If I wanted to see some different pops, I would definitely like to see a younger version of Edge, maybe even holding the rated R spinner belt. I think that would be really cool. A pretty great set. I just don't really have the room to collect it, so I will be kind of purging it off. If I had to give a rating on it, I would give it a pretty high rating. I'd probably do 8.5 again.
And the last set we're going to be discussing about, we kind of teased it earlier on, and that is Toy Story. That is my number one set for Funko that I collect. There's just so much in the Toy Story lineup. I mean, yes, there is a lot of Woodies and Buzz Lightyears, but you do have a variety of other characters. I mean, you had Bullseye, Wheezy, Alien. We had different variety of characters for Toy Story 4, Bo Peep. They've done quite a bit, especially when it comes to the VHS covers where it's not just Woody. You got to introduce Lenny the Binoculars, which I don't know the likeliness of any time soon of Lenny getting his own Funko Pop as it is. So to be featured in that as the cover was pretty cool to see. I mean, there's obviously so much room to see left over. I mean, I'm still hoping for like a Pizza Planet Pop Town with Sid, or like maybe a U-Haul truck moments with Woody and Buzz Lightyear like hanging off of it. There's so much. Even like a pop, like even that would actually be cool for the Pops with Purpose lineup is do Scud, Sid's dog. There's just so much I can say with Toy Story that I feel like we just wouldn't have time to say on just one podcast itself.
Yeah, Toy Story Pops are awesome. One of my favorite movies of all time, or movie series. I have a decent collection of Toy Story Pops, definitely not as much as DK, but I do collect actual Toy Story figures, so that might have something to do with that. And a lot of the Pops are really good. I mean, I love the Slinky Dog Pop. I think that that's awesome. I definitely missed out on the OG Rex. I had bought one for DK back in the day and never picked up one for myself at the time, and now it's a decently priced pop, so I kind of blew it on that one. One pop that I really would love to see be made for Toy Story is Rocky Gibraltar. One of my favorite characters for whatever reason from Toy Story. Always loved him, even as a kid. I just thought he was interesting, and there was never really like, he was just like a background character. He wasn't even really part of like the story at all. And if I had to give a rating on the Toy Story Pops, I'd have to give it a 9. I mean, it's a set that I'm always going to be adding Pops to. I don't know if I'd ever complete it, but as new characters come out, I will definitely add Toy Story Pops to my collection.
Anyways, guys, that is going to be the end of this edition of a Funko Popcast. If you enjoyed this edition, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know your favorite sets of Pops that you collect. And I hope to see you guys on another edition of a Funko Popcast. 1, 2, 3, I'm out of here.
Peace in, peace out.